From the Oklahoma Newsroom, you're watching Thunder Thursday, our game day edition brought to you by J. Marshall Square, Oklahoma City's only big house apartment community. We've got our Thunder coverage team here ready to go for tonight's Game 6 against the Spurs, a possible win-out, close-out scenario for the Thunder. Let me introduce who we got. Barry Trammell, columnist, Anthony Slater, beat writer, and from his home or somewhere in Oklahoma City.
It's a home.
It's a home. It's his home. I didn't know if you were like holed up in a cafe or out on the street or in your, rocker out front of your house.
He's a mysterious dude. There's no doubt about it.
Just a home.
I don't want to out anything, Eric. I don't want to like say you live in Edmond or you live in Chandler. I mean, we'll just say in the metro.
There'll be fans flocking to his house.
Yeah, exactly. The man's got work to do, people. Leave him alone. All right, guys. Let's talk about this all-important, now seemingly all-important Game 6. And Eric, since you're on the remote, we'll start with you. We'll give you first dibs on this one. Is this, can the Thunder afford for this series to go back to San Antonio? I don't want to call this a must-win, but is it pretty important for these guys to close this out tonight?
Yes. Look, they've beaten them twice on the road already, them being the Spurs. That's enough for me. I think that's probably enough for them. The Spurs going into this series had only lost, I think, once at home all season. And for them to be able to pull out 2 wins in this series on the road is phenomenal. They've done the work that they need to do on the road in this series. And it would be to their advantage to close it out tonight so they can start so they don't have to worry about going back to San Antonio. And, they'd be doing us a favor, too, because we'd have a few more days to prepare ourselves for another series.
Well, you guys wouldn't have to hoof it back to San Antonio.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about.
I know my colleagues would much appreciate the Thunder closing out tonight.
Yeah, people that are out there that think we care who wins games, we don't. But we care about us. And so not having to drive back to San Antonio would be just fine.
Look, the road team's 3-2 in this series. San Antonio won once here. The Thunder have won twice there.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here saying the Thunder go down to San Antonio. It's over. This isn't like, remember a couple years ago, the 2014, when the Spurs blew the Thunder out twice at home. Then the Thunder kind of, played the Spurs really well at home. Then a blowout in Game 5, where you thought, hey, if the Thunder could win Game 6, but it looks daunting to go back. It doesn't look daunting to me. I could easily see the Thunder winning a Game 7 in San Antonio. Yeah. But look, you got 2 shots. This is the more appealing one for the Thunder because this place is going to be outrageous tonight in the Peak. So this is the one I'd advise them to look at. But if they lose tonight, we're not writing their funeral on the way to San Antonio.
And like you say, this is feeling different than 2 years ago when you and I sat beside each other in Game 6 and said, "Wow, this is a great game, but gosh, we don't want to have to go back to San Antonio," because it just felt like they weren't winning there. But as much as anything, Barry, is it about getting this on a quick turnaround? This is again a game after 1 day of rest. Sunday would be a couple of days rest for those Spurs.
Well, no, that's a good point. It would give the Spurs a chance to rest those legs, and the Thunder has played better on short rest than have the Spurs. So basically, leading 3-2. This is a toss-up series. We've had 4 straight games that have really been toss-ups with 4 minutes to go. So these are toss-up games. That means the Thunder has a two-thirds chance of winning this series. 66% chance. So it goes back to 50-50 if they lose tonight. So you want to win tonight. It also gives you rest for going into Golden State if you go.
Warriors are home right now.
They're home and they're resting, and Oakland is a long way from San Antonio if you go straight from San Antonio after a Game 7. So much to your advantage to win tonight. But AC's right. It's not over even if they do.
Yeah, definitely not. Last time this series came back to Oklahoma City after a game in San Antonio and a questionable ending had a lot of people wondering what in the heck they'd just seen. We saw the Spurs come and get a victory in Game 3. And Eric, we'll start with you again on this topic, the questionable calls once again at the end of a game in San Antonio. Doesn't feel quite to the level of what we saw with 13-5 in Game 4. But again, that last 2-minute report comes out from the NBA. And lo and behold, they've missed calls again late in the game in San Antonio. Is this just, does it give Spurs fans something to complain about? Is it legit? How do you feel like this is all playing into the narrative of this series?
Well, it gives them a little bit more. I mean, what else could Kawhi Leonard have possibly been doing on that last play with Russell Westbrook goes in for the layup after he gets away from Kawhi trying to wrap his arms around him like he was going to give him a belly-to-back suplex. I don't know what anybody else could have thought he was trying to do, including the refs. So for them not to call a foul in that situation, it just seemed ridiculous. But the funny thing is, in that situation was that Greg Popovich seemed less upset about that call than the one where Danny Green we don't know if it's inadvertently tripped. Steven Adams says he didn't trip him on purpose,
Right.
but the leg came out. Danny Green tripped over the leg of Steven Adams and ended up fouling Kevin Durant for 2 shots to put the Thunder ahead. I believe it was 92-90 with 54 seconds left. In these last 2-minute reports, I don't know exactly what it does. I mean, if the refs read this, are they going to come back to the next game and say, okay, we've got to keep a better eye for these bang bang plays? A lot of them are just judgment stuff that they can't see in the heat of the moment. Like, it's tough to judge whether or not Steven Adams means to stick his leg out and trip Danny Green. They said that was an incorrect no call, but I mean, who's to say that they're going to make that same call if it happens again? So it's a really weird thing that the league's doing with this last 2-minute report, particularly with the bang bang nature of some of these plays.
Well, it's obviously a product of the Tim Donaghy situation.
It's just a transparency thing.
Yeah.
This is a league that went through a big
No, and I
gambling
appreciate
scandal.
that. I appreciate transparency, but
And, I mean, they just want to show
does it
that
do anything?
they just want to show that, look, like, we're acknowledging that these are incorrect calls. These aren't, scandals. These aren't, us really wanting the Spurs or the Thunder to advance because of ratings, that kind of thing. It's stuff Mark Cuban's called for. It's good. They're not, the human element is still there with the refs. And, I think they think that's a good thing.
I think Eric brings up a good point, though. What does it do moving forward? The officials can only do as well as they can do.
I don't think it does anything. They've been doing these reports forever.
Right.
They're just making them public
Yeah.
in the last year or so. I mean, the crew, Monty McCutcheon, all those guys, they've been getting the list says, hey, you messed that call at 1 minute and 2 seconds left. So
Right. Nothing new for the officials.
doesn't affect anything. I mean, for crying out loud, just Kawhi me a river. Cut it out, San Antonio. Score some baskets, stop the Thunder. You didn't do it down the stretch.
Well, I mean, the truth is, look, let's say they call that foul on Leonard Westbrook, who's a really clutch free throw shooter, hit a big one on the end one, goes up to the line, probably hits both. Thunder up 3. Spurs missed 2 threes late. Now, I mean, obviously, maybe they're running a different type action.
might have a chance, but for crying out loud, I mean, you can nitpick everything.
Yeah.
Right. And I think at this point, I mean, Eric brings up a good point about sort of what I think it is nice to have that transparency and that acknowledgement, but you do have some folks down in San Antonio sitting in those seats paying good money saying, what's going on here? Why are these calls seemingly going against our guys? And the Thunder did shoot, I think, 9 more free throws in that game. You usually don't see that in a road game, guys.
Well,
that was huge advantage for the Thunder.
I believe it was game 3. The Spurs shot, I think, maybe 14 more free throws than the Thunder
Yeah,
in
that's right.
Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Hey, the Spurs attacked more. The whistle goes this way. It doesn't. I mean,
Yeah.
look,
I rarely
these
put
things aren't
any.
fixed.
Yeah, I rarely put in. Well, they were at one point.
Yeah, right. One thing I need to. One thing I just got to say,
Go ahead,
especially when we're sitting courtside, like, these are just outrageous athletes doing outrageous things at outrageous speeds. Russell Westbrook flying into bodies, and the refs have to decide, is that enough contact? Is that not enough contact for fouls? They've had a couple egregious misses in this series, but, like, their jobs are so crazy difficult, and what makes it even more difficult is after every single whistle, whoever got the call against them is yelling at them.
And is yelling at them to look up at the.
Check out the replay, this or that, and, like, guess what? If you don't blow the whistle, you can't just 3 seconds, 4 seconds later be like, you know what? I probably missed that. Hold on, tweet, stop the play. Hey, that play 3 seconds ago. Like, their jobs are so hard.
It's very difficult. Eric, I heard you talking. What do you want to say?
Well, and going back to what we talked about this before, but this, the calls and the no calls actually played in the Spurs' favor in Game 2. I mean, they had those 5 mixed calls in that situation, and it led to a 3-on-1, which the Spurs couldn't convert because Steven Adams was running around like a madman. So it goes both ways. The Spurs had an opportunity to finish them off with the no calls in Game 2, and in Game 5, the Thunder took advantage of them.
Hey, let me remind everybody, this is our Thunder Thursday show, brought to you by J. Marshall Square, Oklahoma City's only big house apartment community, as all of our postseason videos on the Thunder are. And can we take a minute and Paige, cue this up. I have to ask Anthony about your hair. I was going to bust you about this last week and forgot. But
I can't see it.
Is there
I
any
can't see it.
chance you're doing a Flock of Seagulls thing here? And you don't even know who these guys are, but check it out. Like the guy over on the right,
He could be part of it
don't
too.
you think? No, don't try to
What?
pass it off. Guy on the right, that's totally you.
I need some girly-looking sunglasses then.
We can get you set up.
Hey,
what do you think, Barry?
Doesn't he look like former Flock of Seagulls member,
You
potentially?
think?
Long hair.
I don't
It's
know.
kind of like,
What are you feeling, Barry?
I mean, whatever. Those dudes were pretty popular, I assume.
I'm king of the Bust AC Slater Club. However, I believe there's been some character assassination going on this show.
Paige and I have taken it to another level.
Shots fired.
I got
You
thick
have to
skin.
admit, I've never gone that deep, have I? I've
Hey,
never.
if you don't like the hair, let me know. I mean,
It's not that I don't like it. I'm just calling out the obvious. You know, it looks a little bit like Flock of Seagulls, my friend.
I'll take it.
They
were popular, right?
Yeah.
They had a large female following. I
Now
assume.
that I have no idea of. That was before my time.
We
so.
know of one.
Not me. I just know who they are and that their hair was ridiculous. All right, back to the game. We got to talk about this, guys. Tim Duncan. He's become obviously a huge storyline in this series, but not because of great play. I mean, if we're talking about old Spurs, Tony Parker is obviously having the best series of those three, although Manu's not been bad either. But
Manu's been actually solid.
Duncan
Okay.
has
his
not
role.
played well at all, and now the talk, is this it? Could tonight be it? Will it be, Barry?
Well, I think it will be his last game if the Thunder wins. I think
Okay.
it'll be Tim Duncan's last game. He looks like he's through to me. The playoff, he actually played okay during the season. He's pretty
25
solid.
minutes a game during the
And
season,
you know
Barry.
what? But Tim Duncan's a pretty proud guy. He doesn't want to play like this.
Yeah.
If in another playoff, trying to keep up with the likes of Steven Adams and Enes Kanter. I mean, that's not.
Right.
Next year, I mean, it's one thing to be this at 40. He's going to be 41 next spring
Right.
and go through this.
He's turned into the Andre Robertson of the Spurs offense right now, where early in the game, Steven Adams was just roaming away from him. And then at one point, they got it to Duncan, and he really tried to make Adams pay and drove, but it was slow. He was flat on the layup. He missed he's missed so many layups in this series, like easy buckets. He's been a problem for San Antonio. And then the other problem is they don't really have much behind him right now with the way West is playing, Diaw's playing, and I guess you could maybe unleash Boban, and we can talk about that. But
I don't see that
the
happening
Thunder's
if it happens.
interior advantage, I think it was a little under talked about going into the series because as we were breaking down matchups, you don't want to be like, it's 22-year-old Steven Adams against Hall of Famer Tim Duncan. Big advantage Thunder, but
Right.
the truth was big advantage Thunder.
Well, and I think, too, the guys, and Eric, I'll throw this to you. I mean, I agree that I'm not sure that we talked about that advantage enough. And yet, David West is obviously capable. We saw him hit a bunch of those elbow jumpers in game one, for crying out loud. Diaw's a tough guard because he can do a lot of different things. And yet, the Thunder, I think it's more a question of what the Thunder has done and how those guys have emerged than maybe how inadequate the Spurs big men are. I mean, it's just been impressive to see Adams and Kanter emerge like this, Eric.
Yeah, I think we kind of underestimated the impact of both sides, or maybe we underestimated the impact that the Thunder's bigs would have on this series, and then we overestimated how much Tim Duncan could bring. And when Anthony was talking about the matchups going into this series, I think I had written that I gave Tim Duncan, or it might have been Anthony, one of us, we gave Tim Duncan the slight edge, but I think that might have been more the benefit of the doubt of him being the wily veteran he is, and Steven Adams coming to this series as the 22-year-old. But we've seen Steven Adams emerge as a star at his position this entire playoffs. Tim Duncan showing his age, and his Kanter swatted the mess out of him toward the final stages of Game 5. So this could, as we've said, be possibly the last game for Tim Duncan. Nick Collison showed him plenty of respect today at Thunder shoot-around and said that he's been one of the great professionals in the game. And I hope, as we discussed on the podcast yesterday, that regardless of the result tonight, the Chesapeake Energy Arena crowd gives him his proper respect.
Well, what would that be, guys? I mean, how could Thunder fans show?
Well, there's only one main scenario by which they could do that.
Thunder
and that's
blowout.
if Thunder's got the game in hand late
Right.
They sub him out.
and Tim Duncan comes out of the game. Now, if it's 98-97, it's all hands on deck.
People
Focus
just
on the
focus.
game.
Yeah.
But if it's 104-96 with 29 seconds left, and out comes Tim Duncan, I would like to see this Oklahoma City
They
crowd
probably would.
rise to
As
their
long-
feet and give
As
him
long
a
as
nice
it's like
ovation.
clear what Popovich is doing and they're taking him out alone, and then maybe Durant or somebody starts kind of clapping.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, Tim Duncan hasn't announced his retirement. Maybe he probably
just
doesn't
in
want
case,
this.
just in case. It's like a provisional on the golf course. Hit a provisional.
Just in case he never comes back this way.
You never know.
Well, I don't think, guys, and we've talked about this before, I don't think there's any chance Tim Duncan does a Kobe-esque retirement year. I mean, we're not going to see him paraded around as a, sort of a stunt before games and, videos in his honor. When he's done, and he's going to ride into the sunset, and, we're not going to get to really see him, appreciate him. And that's the way he wants it, too. That's not like we're not doing our job as basketball fans or whatever. That's going to be his call, and he'll do it his way.
No doubt. I mean, we've talked about it when Kobe came in here and that happened, and good for him. And the truth is, that's how most guys go out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. Most people aren't paraded through the streets like Cleopatra, the way Kobe was.
Yeah. So,
Definitely. And I think if given the chance, I hope Oklahoma City fans will have that appreciation. I think they will. I think they'll recognize it. We were talking about Enes Kanter a second ago, and I know we could talk about the bigs. Probably could have done the whole hangout talking about the bigs, but Kanter and let's pair him with Waiters, guys. Dion Waiters coming off the bench. The impact that these two have had off the bench in these playoffs. AC, I mean, I don't know if we could say there are, looking around the league, considering the regular season too, there may be some guys, 1-2 off the bench that are better. But right now, it's hard to argue these two.
Yeah, maybe Warriors go, you could argue maybe Iguodala, Zealy, whoever the Warriors want to pair with Iguodala and Livingston off the bench, they may have just as much an impact, especially defensively, especially this year with that record. But the truth about the Thunder this season, and maybe another under-talked about thing coming into the series, where the Thunder are very thin are at 8, 9, 10, 11. They're strong at 6 and 7 and getting even stronger because Waiters seems to really be finding himself. Kanter's showing that the production that he had against the not great teams this season is actually translating against San Antonio. But now Billy Donovan has shortened his rotation to 8, where Randy Foye's actually playing some solid minutes as that 8th guy.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, doesn't matter if the Spurs go 9, 10, and 11, because the Thunder aren't trying to match up 9, 10, and 11 where they're thinner.
Right.
And
you don't see him exposed there at
exactly,
that spot where they're vulnerable.
Because Kanter and Waiters are now out there with Westbrook and Durant more, and the Thunder are really deep. Like I said, 1 through 7, and that's really where all their minutes are going.
Eric,
And the Spurs,
go ahead, Barry.
the Spurs bench, while vaunted all season, 8, 9, 10, 11, but in the playoffs, it's not. They hadn't played that well, and in the playoffs, 8, 9, 10, 11 not as important, and all of a sudden this massive advantage for the Spurs on the bench is not there because Boris Diaw, David West, they don't match up with Enes Kanter.
Right.
No, and they're not facing Kyle Singler and Morrows and those minutes and Payne, and they're facing Durant and Waiters
Westbrook
and
Ibaka
Kanter.
and a bunch of players.
Yeah.
So the Thunder bench has gone from perceived weakness now to a strength. And, I mean, we talked about it yesterday. Golden State's the only team we could come up with a better 1-2 punch off the bench in terms of quality of play than these two guys.
Cleveland, Tristan Thompson's coming off the bench, right?
Yeah, and Shumpert or whoever.
I mean, they got a pretty solid bench,
but Waiters and Kanter, I mean, that's
especially the way they're playing.
Right.
that's a potent duo.
Hey, Eric, let me ask you this about those two guys. Who most has surprised you in these playoffs? Is it Kanter and the way he's been able to finish games, or is it Waiters and that consistency that we've seen from him, not just defensively, but we're seeing it on the offensive end too?
Yeah, that's interesting when you put it in that perspective. I think that I'd have to go with Waiters because I always expect Waiters to come back to earth in terms of his offensive contributions. But even when he's not scoring, just the restraint he's shown in his game as this playoffs have gone on, it's been impressive to me. We always knew that Kanter was going to offensive rebound and score around the basket, and his defense has been impressive in this series. But Waiters, from start to finish, and particularly putting that effort and that concentration in on the defensive end in terms of guarding Kawhi Leonard, that's probably been the more impressive thing to me.
Yeah, I would agree. Guys, we're talking about things we might not have gauged right coming into this series. What do we most miss on in your mind? I mean, we talked so much about Durant, Kawhi, and how that matchup was just going to be so determinant. We've not really seen them guard each other. Is that where we were
Durant
most
late
off?
in the last couple games, I think, has really changed it by guarding Kawhi. No, I think we were most off on the big men. The Adams-Duncan matchup, as we've talked about. I mean, like, it's changed the series. The Kanter-Adams lineup that's punishing them on the glass.
Yeah.
Adams has double-digit rebounds in all the games. Duncan hasn't scored in double digits once. It's
huge.
Yeah. That's where.
Well, and it was masked early because of LaMarcus Aldridge dominance.
Yeah.
Had the 2 monster games to start.
Yeah.
But since then, he's 22 of 60 the last 3 games.
And when it's like that, then suddenly the Thunder's interior is a huge advantage, and the Thunder's interior doesn't even include Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. The guys that nationally, it's like, well, it's 2 versus the Spurs. It's like, no, the interior over there has
those 3 guys.
Has a
and we
huge
forget
advantage.
Ibaka, who's he's sort of fallen into the shadows.
Still more threes than anybody else in Thunder Blue, right?
He's shooting 54 or 68% from 3 in the series.
Yeah, he's 12 out of 21 in the series from 3-point. And he's played solid defense on LaMarcus Aldridge.
But you know what? Is it maybe a benefit that they're not having to use him as much? Maybe he's fresher, ready to go for a next series because they haven't lost games because they've gone away from him.
Potentially, I actually worry about him being a little frustrated that he is like the
odd man
he's
out
one
in that.
of the original 4, basically. I know he came a year after Westbrook, but suddenly
guy
everyone in the fan base is talking about, we love this front line, we love these 2 new international centers. So I'd worry about that a little bit more because he's a guy with a lot of pride. You heard him this year about, I just don't like being in the corner and shoot threes when I'm open and that's it.
Right.
So there's a little concern there more than the freshness.
I think we also, Eric, we pretty clearly underestimated the advantage that Greg Popovich would have. I wrote about Billy Donovan today for our coverage, and it's pretty surprising just to see how he's held things together for this team. In the face of all the experience that the Spurs have, all the championships that Popovich has won, buttons have always been pushed right, and yet now. Billy Donovan's at least matching him, and it looks to me like he's winning a lot of those battles. What's been the biggest missed call in your mind, Eric?
Well, since the other guys talked about the front line matchup with Duncan and Adams and those guys, I was going to talk about your column actually, and how Billy Donovan's held his own in this series. He could have panicked after game 1. Maybe us in the media panicked a little, thinking that they were going to make that change at shooting guard. He's handled the shooting guard minutes brilliantly between Robertson starting on Kawhi Leonard and going to Waiters late and not changing things drastically in regard to guarding not Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge. A guy comes out and roasts you 2 games in a row, and you would think that you'd want to make some significant changes defensively, but we saw with our own eyes in the first 2 games that they weren't defending him poorly. It's just LaMarcus Aldridge was just operating on another planet offensively. So for him to have the patience to stick with Serge Ibaka and Steven Adams on LaMarcus Aldridge the way he did, and to see LaMarcus Aldridge come back to earth, I think that speaks volumes about Donovan not being impatient as a first-time coach in these playoffs.
Yeah, that was huge. And, I think about here we are 26 minutes into our hangout, and we really haven't talked very much about Kevin Durant. We really haven't talked very much about Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, the stars in this series. This series has just had so many layers. Kind of wish it could be like a best-of-9 series or something.
Well,
it's been so fantastic.
It has been, and it's not even with the great finishes. There's been a couple of really interesting finishes, but it's not like, Toronto and Miami played, was it 3 straight overtime games?
But
it
quarters 1 through 3.5 were just.
But it's just hard to watch compared to what you're seeing, because in the first quarter, in the second quarter, in the third quarter, you got Leonard and Durant and Westbrook and Aldridge doing all these amazing things, and Kanter and Adams emerging and
Waiters.
The Spurs, you see
I still
flashes from Ginobili. It's just a phenomenal series to watch from start to finish.
I still can't believe the Thunder has won the number of games they have in this series with the turnovers they've had. They've won games with so many turnovers.
The 21 last game was
unbelievable.
It's only 13 in the first half. Well, really, if they cut down those turnovers, they should have had like a nice little lead at halftime.
Yeah, you would think. Okay, guys, let's talk about tonight. Game 6, 7:30 tip. Eric, we'll start with you. What is going to be most important for the Thunder to close this one out, finish this series tonight?
I think they've got to continue to defend. They've got to continue to defend in the fourth quarter the way they have. Last game, they limited the Spurs to, I think, 4 field goals in the last 8 minutes, which is just phenomenal from them. They got to continue to stay focused on the defensive end to close out the game. And I think that everything else will fall into place for them if they do that.
All right, AC, what about you?
Quick start. Keep that crowd in party mode. It's going to be in party mode at the start.
It's true.
The Spurs are known to take them out of the game. I think, Spurs got up double digits, I think, in both games, 3 and 4. The Thunder came back, really in both, only end up winning one of those. So it's not that, like, the Thunder can't come back, but I would just advise to really try to use that early energy as a boost.
All right, Barry?
Get back on defense. The stunning thing to me in this series is that San Antonio can't score against the Thunder's half-court defense. Danny Green told us after the game, he said, we're trying to run. We're pushing the ball because we're trying to get an open shot. He said, we're having trouble. When we line up, we can't get anything going. The Thunder knows our plays. You wrote about that. The Thunder knows our plays. They're stopping us. Look at down the stretch. Kawhi Leonard got 1 shot in the last 5 minutes or something.
Yeah.
The Thunder half-court defense is playing really top-notch. But the Spurs are beating them on the run. They're getting Danny Green open in transition. They're getting Leonard some dunks.
Especially when they start jogging.
Get back on defense. You're going to win Game 6.
It's weird because it's kind of like an issue there where what's the Thunder's best advantage? Crashing the glass.
Yeah.
That's why they need guys like Durant, Robertson, Waiters to get
Start leaking back,
because your 3 main guys crashing it are going to be Canner, Adams, and Westbrook.
There's just so much richness about this series. You saying that makes me think, who would have thought at the beginning of this series we'd be talking about how the Spurs half-court offense is struggling against the Thunder defense?
After Game 1 of this series. Remember Game 1? Jeez.
Well, and another crazy thing, in a lot of ways, the roles are reversed. The Spurs are relying on sort of isolation ball, and they're relying on star power, Leonard and Aldridge. The Thunder's actually had support players step up, Adams, Cantor, Ibaka shooting well. I mean,
who'd have thought that?
Who'd have thought it when we said 5-on-2? We didn't mean the 2. We're Thunder Blue.
All right, lightning round, guys. Who wins tonight? Barry?
I always take the home team in even series, so I'll take the Thunder.
I'll take the Thunder. It's a little surprising to me, though. Vegas has the Spurs as, like, I think 1.5-point favorites. I mean, that's basically a toss-up, but just the fact that it's tilted that way is a surprise considering what that arena is going to be like tonight.
Eric?
I'll go Thunder. It's going to be another close one. Game 1 was an aberration. Every game since then has been a fourth-quarter game or a last possession game, and I think the Thunder will close it out tonight.
Guys, bring your earplugs. I think it's going to be loud. I think it's going to be fun.
You giving us a prediction?
Oh, I'm taking Thunder. I said if the Thunder won down there, I thought they'd close it out here. So they won down there. I say they close it out tonight.
Should be a good one.
That would mean
this is unbelievable.
Paige, that is unbelievable. Paige.
That was a mispunch.
Oh, sure.
No, it's fair.
Now she's not wanting to
Better
take
the
credit
guy on
for
the
it.
far right, AC, than the second from the left, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing that, although I probably could.
Oh, boy. All right. Hey, stay tuned. You never know what you might see from AC in the front row tonight. 7:30 TNT at the Peak. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.
Guy on the left's the worst. I don't